All right, let's see. We are in progress. Okay. This is February 20th, 2023, Monday, and we are going to talk and discuss and listen to JODEE Gibson, and her new book is Healing Your Map. And let me just do a little introduction, and I won't say everything that I want to say, but oh my goodness, I've got a whole page full for JODEE. And if you have her book, then you can see that on the back there of her little bio. But she is a human behavioral expert and master coach. And she told me just to tell you ladies that she's just a mom. She just helps moms to understand why we do what we do. But she has, oh my gosh, she's got a master's degree in organizational leadership. She's a licensed NLP trainer. She's certified hypnotherapist, certified professional coach, trauma certified practitioner. Oh my gosh, what am I leaving out here? Former ICF Michigan president, is that right? ICF Michigan ex-board member, just all kinds of things behind her name here. But she's also the founder of the Neuro Enlighten method, and her holistic approach is just deeply layered in developmental psychology, neuro-linguistics, coaching, the law of vibration. So y'all get the idea here. And now she's an author, and although she's considered an expert in this field, she will forever remain a student of this work. And I love that. I just love it, because you never quit learning, right? We never quit learning. So I just love that. In the NLP, she says, is her toolbox. It's the art of, and you have to help me out on this, JODEE, edible transformation of your anchors and your beliefs, and the understanding, the patterns that are encoded on your brain. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So she just explains so much in this book, and I'm going to have to go back through and reread. It is just chock full of so much information. I mean, I have so much highlighted through it, and I'm going, oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good. Oh, I like that. And, and when you read things, you think, I need to show my daughter that, Okay, we've got some more moms coming on, Mary Ann and Sandy. And before we really get started here, would y'all just so that JODEE can get sort of a feeling of us moms and who we are and where we're at today, because whenever I speak, I like to know my crowd, right, and know who I'm talking to. So I want you to give me two things. Okay, I want you to give me your number for the day, like between 1 to 10, and 10 being the best. All right. And then give me a word, like a feeling word. How do you feel right now? So who wants to go first?
Okay. I can go. I'm Colleen, and my number is, I would say, a 9 today. And I would say the word is content.
Oh, wow. That's good. Okay.
I'll go next. I'm Gloria, and I'm thinking a 9 too, Colleen. Had a good day, and I'm feeling productive.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Mary Ann, and my number is 7. Cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
I'm Glenda. It's a 7, and I've been kind of productive today.
I'll go. I'm Teresa. I'll probably say 7 today, and I can say I'm good.
You're good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that, Teresa.
I had Bella today.
Oh, yay.
Oh, how sweet.
Oh, sweet.
Grandchildren
Yes, it
are the
does.
bomb. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm Brooke. I'll say a 6, and I am distracted today.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, Michelle. Michelle's joining.
Michelle Basinger, she's our newest mom
Mhm.
as of yesterday. So,
Mhm.
and Sandy is muted, so she may not be able to come in. She may just be listening. Here she is. Hi,
Oh,
Michelle.
there's Michelle. Oh, is she muted?
Yeah, you may be muted, honey. I can't unmute her from here. Okay.
I'm not sure she's muted. It doesn't look like
Yeah,
it.
it doesn't say that on her
Mm-mm.
screen, but
Mm-mm.
okay. Well, I'm going to say I'm about a 9.5 today, and I've been pretty productive. Pretty productive today.
Good.
Okay, I can unmute her now. I think. Technology, I love it. Okay, Michelle, I'm trying to unmute you. You may have to do it. Okay. Jody, you want to chime in on this? How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I feel like I'm a 10, right? Because I think it's a choice.
Yeah.
And I will get into that
Mhm.
later, right? But it's like
Yeah.
choosing how you feel is part of life. And so I think
Mhm.
it's understanding if I'm going to wake up every day and choose a 10, my world around me might try and adjust that, but we're at choice.
Yeah.
We're at choice.
So true.
It's
So
true.
true.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. I guess she had to get off and come back in. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, whenever I talked to Jody yesterday, she says, well, tell me about your group, and so I told her just a little bit about who we are and what we do and our addicted loved ones, and that we're all in just a different space, a different place on our journey here, but we have all been growing for the last couple of years, and we see growth in each other's journey, and we're here to support each other. And I think we're just the best support group ever, and we have different speakers and authors on, and coaching calls and support calls. And, we're just doing life together. We are in each other's lives every week, going through whatever we're going through, whatever we are going through personally, or whether our children, what they're going through, because if they're going through it, then we're, mixed in that too. So,
We are family.
yeah,
We are family. Mhm.
we are. So I'm going to let, Jody just talk about what she wants to talk about. I don't know what kind of agenda that you might have. I do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to let you start off and introduce why you do what you do, and maybe a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. Let me just start by saying thank you so much for having me. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for loving it. Truly, I feel like my world right now is like before book and after book, because I wrote the book truly just to get it up and out, and just to give you a little bit of my story, which a lot of it's in the book. I coach and speak for a living, and I would usually leave the stage and people would say, well, we want more. Like, no one's talking about what you're talking about. We need more. And so I compiled this book and put it out. And what I didn't realize is how many people it would touch, and how many lives it would affect, and how many different, should I say, like, areas people could take it into. And so right now, my biggest 2 requests are, hey, can you write a version of this for addicted, like for the addicted population? And can you please write a version of this for teachers? Because they're like, if teachers understood how their words affected the kids they're teaching, maybe they would teach differently, and vice versa. If they understood the language that their kids were sharing, they may interpret it differently. A little bit of story about me, and I think that you guys have a lot of it there. Crazy things that don't make sense. I was a teen mom. I was sharing with you, my daughter turned 30 last month, and I'm not even sure it's possible that I have a 30-year-old, but that's the true story. I have a 30-year-old and a 13-year-old, 2 daughters. And what I learned was that the moment I had my daughter, I realized I was in trouble. Like I realized I'm not equipped for this and I need to make more money. I need to do all kinds of things. And everybody on the planet was judging me and telling me I just ruined my life because I just had a baby and I was a teenager. And so I feel like I set out on this quest to just do better and to be better. And I had no idea what my waterline was at that moment. So I share that with you and saying, I don't know how many of you got all the way through the book, or I'm not even sure where it is in the book.
It's
But I
toward the end.
remember, I remember going back to going to my dad and saying, hey, I have to go back to school. Mind you, I barely graduated from high school. I graduated from one of the most under-functioning high schools on the planet. I was very enmeshed in developmental trauma. I had tons of things going on for me that I had normalized. So in my world, I thought I was fine. I had no idea how much healing I had to do.
Was this in Michigan?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Metropolitan Detroit. Yeah. I grew up in Lincoln Park. So I feel like back in, now it's a very high performance school. Back in 91, I think we were like truly like bottom 3 out of probably 100 schools in the metropolitan Detroit area. But I share that in saying, I remember going to the local community college and coming back to my dad and saying, I'm not going. And he said, why? And I said, because it's going to take me 10 years to get an associate's degree.
Oh,
Like I'm working full time, right? I think that was one of my biggest things was I worked full time, even though I had a baby, right? Whereas I was like, I'm not going to sit on assistance and not, there's no judgment about that. I feel like I was just too proud. And so I was like, I can only take one class at a time. And he said, okay, cool, don't go. And as soon as I went to walk out the door, he said, I have a question for you. Where are you going to be in 10 years if you don't go? And I was like, okay.
good question.
I registered the next day. And it took me 9 years to finish my associate's degree. Truly, right? I remember my parents saying, what do you want for graduation? And I said, I want a sweatshirt. This is when hoodies first came out. I said, I want a hoodie that says alumni because I just don't want to be here anymore. Right? I want to be on the other side. But in that space, it's in the book and I don't want to get too far into it. But at some point in time during my 9-year journey at that 2-year college, I got a letter in the mail that said I was on the dean's list. And I remember calling my parents, sobbing, crying, and saying, I don't know what I did wrong. Like I'm turning all my work in. This just doesn't seem right. I was so upset because I felt like I was doing the right thing. And I said, I have no idea how I ended up on the principal's list. And I can hear both of them in the background, both of them college grads, kind of laughing. And I'm like, it's not funny. And they were like, do you even know what the dean's list is?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. Like, and so when they explained it to me, my whole world changed. And I often share that story because people say things like change takes time. Change takes, no, fuck, it does not, right? It does not. Because in that moment, I was like, wait, I have a 4.0? Hang on a second. And I literally like relived my whole life in those like 30 seconds. And I was like, it literally took my breath away because I was like, wait, if I'm on the dean's list and that means I'm smart. And if I'm smart, that means that this isn't true and this isn't true. And it means that I'm capable of this. And like everything changed in that moment. And so I share that in saying it took me another 8 years to finish. I finished undergrad and then I went to grad school and finished grad school. 17 years collectively. And I would not allow myself to have a second kid until I finished my master's. It was at that point I started studying human behavior because I realized, wait a second, who I was when I started this journey and who I am now are two completely different people. And through that space, I had my own little binge drinking space, right? Where I feel like I never went to treatment. However, I could have, right? I easily could have. I made some terrible choices. I did some crazy things that the average bear, I'm now realizing, right? I'm pushing 50 soon, but it's like, I'm now realizing, oh, those things weren't normal. They were just normal for me. And I share all these things to share with you. Whatever is on our map is what we've normalized. Allow me to shift now into the book and give you the idea of where the book came from. The past 13 years, I've been studying human behavior outside of the Western approach. So this is outside of therapy, outside of the DSM, which I think that the DSM is like, let's diagnose and medicate your challenge, right? Versus understanding how did we get here and what keeps perpetuating this behavior. that's kind of that 13-year journey of me studying all that is where the culmination of this book came. So the idea of the book of Healing Your Map is, I believe at the moment that we are conceived, we're given a blank map. And this blank map then collects every feeling, every thought, every success, every failure, every relationship, every sound, every song, every color, every single thing you have ever been through in your life. Every single person on the planet has their very own map. So I have a map, you have a map, your kids have maps, spouses, siblings, brothers, cousins, neighbors. Everybody on the planet has their very own map. And your map then becomes the lens through which you filter the world, which is why something can happen right now. And we will have, what is there, 9 people here? We'll have 9 different stories of what happened because we saw it through our lens. And I share that in saying the idea behind the book was like, how do I allow people to dissociate and say, what's on my map that's creating this outcome versus what's wrong with me, right? And I share that in saying, I always share the story too about my school journey, right? So there was this idea that if I knew that I was smart before I got that letter, I probably would have made different choices. But I was never treated in that. I think I was never treated in that manner. And I really grew up in my siblings' shadows, right? And I didn't compare to them. Well, I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm not them, right? Like what they're good at, I might not be good at, but it doesn't mean I'm not good at other things.
Right.
And so I share that in saying, when we realize, oftentimes, and I'll circle back to this later, oftentimes we're expecting something from someone that they may not even have on their map. It's just on ours.
Right.
And so we're kind of trying to overlay our map onto their life. And we have an expectation of how they should sing or dance or show up in the world, provided our lens. And I think that's where things get really clear. And that's where things get really challenging.
Yeah.
Think about where we've been the past 3 years as a collective world. We're fighting about race. We're fighting about politics. We're fighting about vaccinations. We're fighting about all kinds of things without ever saying, okay, right? I feel like there's 2 things, and I talk about it in the book, the difference between curiosity and judgment, right? We're quick to judge people who don't see those things like we do, versus getting curious about, hey, I wonder what's on their map that creates that decision for them, right? I wonder what's on their map that keeps them outside of feeling the way that I do. And so I think it's really powerful when we get curious and say, what's on someone's map or what's on mine that keeps me from arriving where I'm supposed to go. And oftentimes I'll say to people, everything about you've planned your whole day to go over this way, yet your map keeps taking you this way. And it's going to continue we can get in our car and start going this way, and we'll end up right back over here. Because until we heal our map, it's going to keep navigating us into the place that it's been programmed to navigate us to.
Because that's normal.
It's absolutely normal, right? And so it's about understanding the things that are not going to stand out to us are the things that we've normalized. And I also share in the book, it's not about being right or wrong. It's simply about being different, right? Because sometimes people say, well, that's wrong, this is right. It's just different. If what you're doing isn't working, try something different.
I
Right?
tell my husband that all the time.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, you're just different.
Yeah.
It's just
And
different.
so I think the book was created, and I know that I feel like looking back at the book, I was trying to get it up and out. I'm sure that my second book will have a little bit more clarity, but for anybody that's read it and you understand that there's 6 layers to human behavior, all of them, I want to say, creating awareness around each one of them and the roles that they play kind of unlocks the depth of our map, right? And then there's also 6 tools in the book that help you understand how to, I want to say, repattern, or how to dismantle and recreate your map. And I intentionally put the questions at the end of every chapter because it's not really about, I always say to people, like, I'm not going to come back and check your answers, but the more you witness your own journey, the more self-awareness you have around the things that you think, the more tools you have, right? So the more that you're capable of writing things down, right, and answering the questions, you'll get to the end of the book and go, oh my gosh, that's this answer. Or
Mhm.
that thing that you'll get all the way to the end and go, oh my God, it's right there. But we didn't notice it because we've normalized it.
And that's in chapter 9, where you talk about the different levels and the
Mhm.
energy and the vibrations. And I really did like that because I can associate with a lot of that, and it's happened before. And I call it, well, it's it's the Holy Spirit, or I got the Holy Goosebumps, or whatever it was whenever I stepped into that room, and the energy in it was just like, oh, this is bad energy. I gotta get out of here. I do
Right.
not feel comfortable, you know. And then there's other times I've gone places and oh, this is a happy place. Okay, I like this energy in here. Think I'll stick around for a little bit, So
I often say to people, I used to sell real estate and I sold it for a long time, but I'm like, you would open a lockbox, open a door, right? And you walk in and you're like, nope, because you can just feel the energy. It's just weird,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Versus other times where you open the door and you walk in and there's a full-on party going on in there and you're the only person in the room, right? Because you're like, this is amazing. Like as soon as you get in there, you can feel it. And so,
Yeah.
yes, I feel like we're jumping to that space, but in chapter 9, I talk about energy, and I feel like that's where things get a little bit woo-woo, right? But I can break them down for you and help you understand them at a really fluent level. Has anybody read through all 7 of these levels and knows what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Somebody
I have.
perhaps we haven't. Okay.
I skimmed through it this
Yeah.
afternoon.
Sure.
Mhm.
So understanding that there's 2 kinds of energy in the world. I'm going to give you the 2 kinds, and then I'm going to show you the levels of how you get from A to B, from the top to the bottom of both of them. These 2 energies are anabolic and catabolic. And this is what I talk about when I say, like, no one's talking about the stuff in this book, yet it's all related. Anabolic energy is what happens inside your being when you get this amazing news, or you wake up and you're like, oh my God, everything is great, right? It's this freeing, you literally feel expanded, right? If somebody called you right now and was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know you just won $50,000 for something, you'd be like, oh my God, like you would feel it. It would be a visceral response. In those moments when your body experiences anabolic energy, your body sets off serotonin, sets off dopamine, endorphins, all the happy chemicals literally flood your body. You feel taller, your shoulders come back, and you truly expand. And you're open. Your energy is open and you're ready. So think about times when you've learned things or you've been surprised in a good way, right? And you've really just taken it all in. Think about where your posture goes, right? You stand up tall and you're open and you're ready to receive. The complete opposite of anabolic energy is catabolic energy. And so when we experience catabolic energy, this is what happens when we feel shamed, we feel anger, right? We literally contract. So if you can imagine that we contract, we shrink, our shoulders roll in, our body sets off adrenaline, cortisol, all these things. We're in fight or flight. I often say it's like having cement shoes on, where you go to run and you literally can't move, right? You're stuck. And so I think a lot of times, especially in the world of addictions, right? Especially as parents, we feel truly stuck. Like we do not have choice. We feel like we're held at the liberty of the decisions that our kids make, or our loved ones, or whoever it is makes, right? And so it's understanding, when we talk about our map, I say everything that has happened to you, and I share that in saying, I say the moment that you're conceived, you get a map, because I truly believe that things can happen in utero that we internalize as humans. So I feel like sometimes people think at the moment that you're born, you're given this map. I think it's the moment that you're conceived. And I share that in saying, everything from your childhood has been anchored on your map. And it's either been anchored in your map in an anabolic energy or in a catabolic energy. And so when you recognize and you realize, if relationships are not a strong suit for you, it's probably anchored on your map in a catabolic, stuck, shrunk down, frozen energy. And so that's what's modeled, right? That's also what we attract around us. We're also, I feel like, without getting completely woo-woo, but I'm gonna explain to you guys the 7 levels, and then we'll circle back, and I'm hoping that you'll find yourself in this space, and also feel free to pause me and ask questions throughout. If we start at the bottom of these 7 levels and move upward, level 1 energy is 100% catabolic. So level 1 energy is when we truly feel like a victim. We feel like a victim, we feel shame, we feel stuck, we feel powerless. We're not even angry. We're just like, what do you want me to do? We feel betrayed. We're full of blame, right? And we're just stuck. There's no options. We move from a level 1 to a level 2. A level 2 energy is also 100% catabolic, and it is anger. It's anger, it's frustration, it's defiance, it's the F you, I'll show you, right? It's all that pent up explosion that comes out. So levels 1 and 2 are also 100% unconscious. When we're in those spaces, we have no concept that we're there, and we have no concept that there's another choice to be somewhere else. As we creep up, we find ourselves in level 3. Level 3 is the justification, the rationalization, the logical thinking, where we're like, okay, well, he didn't mean to hit me, or he didn't mean to steal our money, or they didn't mean to not feed the kids, or they didn't mean to not call me. They didn't, right? And it's all this, we just start justifying and rationalizing. It's fine. I'm going to give him another chance. It's okay. People make mistakes. I get it, right? And we start to find this compassion, right? That's a level 3. It's still very highly catabolic. When we get to level 4 is what I call the land of the fixers, right? Level 4 is right in the middle of the 7 levels. And level 4 is truly the most combination that you're going to get of both. It's almost like a 50-50. You're drinking from both spaces, because you're starting to be like, okay, level 4 is this fixer mode, right? And I always say, level 4 is we're starting to feel this anabolic energy because we're finding solutions. Once we rationalize, we're like, okay, wait a second, maybe I can fix it. I know this guy and he has this thing and we can put this back together and it's really not a big deal. And I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to run and get all these tools and I'm going to put it all back together and we're going to fix it, right?
That's what a lot of moms are. They
Yes,
just,
I was just going to say, I candidly share that, and I tread lightly, and I tread lightly with this crowd, but I also don't. And I'm sharing that with you. I too had a 7-year journey to hell and back with my older daughter, which I don't broadcast that. I'm sharing that with you here as moms because I feel like we're in a trusted space, but that definitely was a terrible and terrifying thing to be a part of. So I wholeheartedly understand this, and it ended with a full-blown heroin addiction. And I think I shared with you guys earlier, I'm in Detroit. And so she's, I think 4 years in active recovery. And it came down to, I think 10, 11, 12 different residential programs, but it came down to like, you don't do heroin in Detroit and live. It's just not a thing. Like that equation doesn't add up here. I don't know if that's different in other parts of the country, but here it's brutal. But I share that in saying there's this crazy dance that happens between a 4 and a 1. A 4 needs a 1. So a 4 is constantly looking for a victim or somebody to fix. And I'm sharing this meaning when I share with you there's 7 levels of energy, all of us have a dominant level of energy that we show up in the world with. So I feel like when I'm telling you like a 4, right? If somebody's dominant level of energy is 4, the people that they're looking for are 1s, right? They love to help and save and fix and contribute and donate and share and build for and buy for and feed level 1s. And it's not a conscious thing. It's just the way they are, right? So 4s need 1s, and 1s constantly are looking for a 4. Because the last thing, right? And the addicts are usually at 1. They're a victim to where they are.
Mhm.
And think about it, in that world of addiction, they can get pushed to anger, they can get pushed to justify, but they really live in that 1 space.
So they're
And
always looking for a 4 mom.
they're always looking for a 4 because the 4 is just going to fix it, or at least temporarily, right? So moving up, and I'll circle back to scissor syndrome and overfunctioning. Somebody remind me if I forget, but so from 4 comes 5. So 5 is literally the divide and conquer. Like, hang on a second, wait a second. We're all adults. We're all capable. You go do this, you go do that, you step that way, I'm going to go this way. We're going to circle back in a week, or we're going to circle back in a month, we're going to circle back in an hour, and we're going to make a plan, right? And it's all about divide and conquer. And they believe that every single person has the capacity to contribute. From that space shifts into, and you guys can see it, the top of this is 7, and 7 is 100% anabolic. So if you're at a 5 or a 6, you're functioning on this really high level. Your default energy is always open and ready. You're not in that contracted, stuck space.
So would
So
you
no-
say a level 5 is anabolic?
It's pretty anabolic, yeah. And I think that there's a chart in the book somewhere.
Okay.
I would be lying to you if I told
You
you.
said 4 was 50-50.
Yeah. And so level 6 is more like a detached involvement. So somebody that functions at a level 6, and I can share with you, my dominant is 6. And so I think a lot of times people think I'm aloof or disconnected or not paying attention. I'm not at all. I'm completely tuned in. I hear every single word. I know everything that's going on in that space. I just choose to not engage. Because I know 2 things, candidly, 2 things I know. I know for sure the more I understand my own energy. And if I engage, I'm going to have to shift down energy, and I don't want to do that because it doesn't serve me, right? How I serve the world is by staying in my 6. The second part of this, I know there's a 4 running around the planet somewhere that'll take care of it for me, right? And it's candid to say that, right? But I'm always like, there's tons of 4s. I'm going to stay in my 6, right? But that detached involvement sometimes feels cold to people that need you to be histrionic and, oh my God, did you hear about the blah, 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 blah? And like, even my friends know I'm not going to engage, right? Where I'm like, hey, is there something, like, can I help? Can I talk to him? Do you want me to do a coaching session? Like, do you want a copy of my book? How can I show up, right? But I'm not going to show up and fix. I'm going to show up and be a resource, and I'm going to hold space, and I'm going to expect people to honor that. And if they can't, I'm like, okay, bye. And that's not a bad thing, right? I'm just not willing to contribute to the cycle. If I'm like, hey, come up here, breathe some 6, right? Check out how cool it is, right? And then the last level is 7. And so I say level 7 energy is, we can't live there. It can't be someone's default energy. Even if you were a Buddhist monk, you'd have to come out of that at some point in time. Level 7 energy is 100% anabolic. And what happens in that space, that's when you're completely disconnected from time, space, responsibilities, everything. That's what happens when you're like at dinner with friends, or you're zoned out, whatever you do, whether it's yoga or knitting or walking in nature or whatever you do, reading a book. You know how all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I've been here for 3 hours.
Right.
I told Target, right? Sometimes we go to Target, we're in our 7, right? Sorry, my phone was in the car, right? Things like that. So it's like 7 is like when you just are in the state of bliss.
Okay.
So I share that in saying, I'm sure that you all found yourselves, and we bounce around all day long throughout these levels. It's just one of them is our dominant, right? We also might be a 5 at work and a 2 at home, or a 2 at work and a 4 at home, right? And so it's understanding in these different environments, sometimes we show up differently. And I share that in saying, my biggest wish with this book is to teach people how to heal. Because I think the more that we learn how to heal, the more our energy rises, because we release all the trauma, we release the things that were hindering us previously. And the higher our level of energy is, the more we find what you attract in the world is your default energy. And I share in the book, like, if I'm listening to channel 955, there's 0 chance I can hear what's on channel 105.9. I just can't, because I have it tuned to 955. And I share that in saying, a lot of times people are like, but I want this outcome, but their default level of energy is here. And they're angry, right? Or they're frustrated, or they're mad. They're like, this person always has this great outcome. It might be about the way they perceive things. Which circles me back to what we said earlier when we started, and we were like, hey, and there's no judgment here. I'm openly sharing, like, when we say people, when you said, hey, what are you, I think it was a 0 to 10. And I was like, I'm a 10, right? Because if I get to pick, if somebody's like, hey, Jodee, where's your energy? I'm gonna be like, it's a 7, even though it probably can't be at a 7, right? But I'm gonna pick the highest possible, because if I fall down from that, I'd rather fall down than have to work my way up, right? And I share that in saying, two things. I kind of want to talk about scissor syndrome and I want to talk about overfunctioning. Do you guys have questions, thoughts, or ideas? Because I feel like I'm on like a JODEE bender. You guys are amazing.
Do any of y'all have questions for her right now? I know we're listening fast.
I know. I always say like, I can either talk slower or right, like me talking slower would me be not honoring who I am as a human. But I also often say like, this is probably recorded, so I know I'm going fast, but you can go back and listen. And you can read the book, right? It's all in the book.
Yeah.
But just understanding two things I want to cover, and then we'll kind of pause for a second. But overfunctioning is this space where we see something that's challenging, and so we overfunction for people to the capacity that we incapacitate them, right? So we overfunction and I want to say like helicopter parent, or we fix things before they're broken, or we don't allow kids to find the bottom because the bottom would be hard, right? It might be hard financially. It might be embarrassing as a family. They might not survive through it. There's so many reasons why we want to fix things before they get that bad, right? But I share that in saying like, think about your training wheels. How many people here know how to ride a bike or did it at one point in time in their life, right? We all kind of rode a bike at some point. The first time you rode a bike, it may have had training wheels on it. It may have not, right? If it did, they were your stability, right? That's kind of the concept of overfunctioning. If we have adult humans in our life and we're still the training wheels and we're mad at them that they won't let us take the training wheels off, yet it's on us, right? But I share that in saying, taking the training wheels off, when you learned how to ride a bike, did you learn how to ride a bike that you got on it and you just took off? Or did you get on it and you were like, oh my goodness, I think about now, like they have helmets. I didn't have a helmet as a kid.
No.
I'm guessing we probably didn't either, but it's understanding that first time we got on the bike, we're like, okay, wait a second. So you want me to put both of my hands here and these hands are steering this wheel in front of me. And then my feet, you want to go around in this circle thing, but you want my body to not go this way or this way. And the bike's going to take off and move. Wait, what? Right? And so to get that level of coordination took time. It took time to build up those things. And by the end of the summer, maybe it wasn't the first summer, maybe it was a couple summers in, you might find yourself riding no-handed, right? Or one-handed, or you can put a friend on your bike, right? And tool around. That was a learned thing. We learned that because someone let us be free on our bike and let us do crazy things, even if we crashed and burned while doing it. The other example I love to use is imagine when your kids first started walking.
Yeah.
Like, is it the first time that they felt you were like, nope, he's not going to be a walker. Nope, just put the bubble wrap on him, just keep him in the crib, right? Or did we have to watch them stand up and fall down and stand up and fall down, take a step, fall back, crack their head, right? That was painful shit to watch.
Yeah.
Right? Then they started running and you're like, oh my God, you shouldn't be running. And they skinned face, skinned knee, black eye, whatever it was. Right? They had to figure out how to use their feet underneath them. It's not something we can teach them. It's not something we can keep them safe from. They got better at it the more they failed, kind of like sports, right? So I share that in the capacity of overfunctioning. Oftentimes we find ourselves overfunctioning, especially if we're at a level 4, because we just want to fix it, right? We want to fix it because we know that it hurt. Or we know that we went through that same pain and that pain felt bad for us. And since we don't want anybody to feel that kind of pain, we're going to save them from that. But it's kind of like saying, you know what? I skinned my knee so many times. Just crawl for the rest of your life. You'll be fine. You can get a job that crawls. You can. It's like, no. Right? And so I think it's about understanding, like, am I in this space where I'm over functioning for someone, and what role does that play for them, or what message does that send? And I always say too, this isn't about shame, it's about awareness. I think the more that we realize how we show up in the world and the more we heal, the more we learn from our healing journey, the more we then understand people around us because we healed through it.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like, I feel like the entire book, if I was still the teenage girl living in my hometown with a 30-year-old kid, not ever having moved, this book wouldn't be possible.
Right.
But it was possible because I just kept not taking no for an answer. And I just stayed the course. But I share that in saying the more I healed, the more knowledge I gained. This definitely wasn't about the decisions that my kids made and if they made the right or wrong decision. This was about the choices that I made. And I realized the more I healed, the more powerful of a human I could be to everybody around me, including my family. But
Right.
it started with me first.
So you're saying that this scissor syndrome, and we covered a little bit of this on our last call, the analogy with the caterpillar in the cocoon and having to get stronger and stronger and to break that out. But if we saw, you know, and we watched it every day and we saw how it was struggling and we came up with a pair of scissors and
Yeah, and
you
yeah,
know,
allow me to shed light on that. So the scissor syndrome thing, I created that analogy of you see this cocoon hanging outside and it's kind of warped, it's kind of tilted, whatever it is, we see it and we think it's struggling. And we keep watching and we're like, man, I've been watching this out the window and I think he's really struggling. I'm just gonna go help him. So we go outside with our scissors, right? Little tiny scissors, and we cut open this cocoon and the butterfly hits the ground. And we're like, oh my God. And every time he tries to take off, he hits the ground again. And he hits the ground, he hits the ground. And what we're like, we think we're helping them because we freed them from this cocoon. But what we didn't realize is every time they pushed their wings against that cocoon to get that old layer off of them, they were also building massive muscle that they would later need to fly their wings. And so if we free them from the cocoon and they have no muscle to fly, how far can they get? And it kind of goes back to the map too, right? How many things are on, and I share this too. I feel like I'm hoping this is coming off really like respectfully. This isn't judgment to moms, right? This is creating awareness around, am I expecting something from my kids that they don't have access to on their map? And or do I have old pain on my map that I don't want to revisit and I don't want them to have to visit either? So I'm going to shelter them from it. And I share that in saying, I think a lot of us have old trauma and old pain that we've normalized, and our kids watched us normalize it. And so that's what I talk about when I talk about like awareness and understanding. I feel like I could go off in a tangent talking about the layers, but just understanding like however we show up in the world is what we're going to find, and what level of energy we're projecting in that space, right? So if I'm a victim to my child's addiction, I'm now stuck at a level 1 to somebody else's choices. Does that make sense? And so it's understanding, how do I view my kids' decisions from a level 2, right? Like what just pisses me off about it, and like finding the anger in what they do. And then level 3 is like, okay, how did we get here? How can it change? What can I choose differently that would allow me to process this space? What can I acknowledge about their addiction that makes me go, okay, you know what, that makes sense. I don't have to accept it, right? I always talk about acknowledging and validating. I'm not accepting what's happening. I'm acknowledging it's happening. I'm going, okay, this is happening. And then 4 is like, okay, how do I fix it? And I immediately go, you know what? I'm not going to be a 4 today. I'm not going to fix it. And then level 5 is like, okay, who do I know? I think 5 is like divide and conquer. Like, who do I know that's been through this? Who do I know that I could lean into? Right. And think about all the different spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. Like if I built my support team and I had somebody in an emotional support partner, a physical support partner, a financial support partner, right? And I built this tribe of like divide and conquer, and I can come to you guys and you guys are going to hold me through this. This is really cool. Right. And then if I move up to my 6 and I'm like, okay, you know what? how do I allow myself to be detached from what my kid is doing, even if it's for 30 seconds, right? Because I remember in the throes of some of that shit, driving the streets of Detroit looking for my kid. I get it. I wasn't very detached then, right? But I could think about it. And the more I practiced it and the more I tried it on, the more fluent I got in it. And then I started my own healing, or my own, I want to say my own self-care routine. For anybody that knows me, I'm a huge yogi. Like, I love yoga, and people are like, oh my God, you love it. I'm like, yeah, it didn't, most people don't know. I started doing yoga because I didn't know what else to do with my body when she was in the throes of that craziness. And so I showed up at a yoga studio one day, crying my face off, and they were like, come on back in, here's a mat. And that's how it started. But I realized I had to find my center. I wasn't good for anybody if I was distracted and looking for all these external things to soothe my internal pain or to soothe my internal story, right? And so it was about saying, if I can find my center, even if it's for 30 seconds a day, and then it's 5 minutes a day, and then it turned into an hour a day. And the more I practice it, if I can find my center, I'm going to attract other people that are centered. I'm going to attract other grounded people. I'm going to attract centered opportunities. I'm going to maybe model to my kid what being centered looks like, even if they think I'm crazy or they don't live with me or whatever, right? But the more I stay in me and the more I honor who I am and how I show up in the world, the more answers I find, right? If you think about the levels of energy, if I was used to being stuck and powerless to my child's addiction, and then over time I found myself at a 5 or a 6 simply by being centered, even if it was a 3 for a while, how I'm going to experience other people when I'm at a 3 is different than how I'm going to experience them when I'm at a 1.
Yeah.
How many of you guys can relate with the idea where people will say, don't talk to them right now because they're mad, right? Whether it was you as a child not wanting to talk to your parent because they were mad, or your spouse where you're like, okay, I'm going to let him cool off. That's for a reason, right? We don't engage when people are fired up because you're going to get a different response when they're not fired up.
Right.
That's a simple explanation of understanding, right? It's choosing to say, hey, I'm going to let this person chill for a minute. I'm not going to, if there's already a fire simmering, I'm not going to add gasoline.
Right.
Or I could show up as a resource and say, hey, I know you're really frustrated right now. How can I support you through this? I can just sit here and be quiet and just be connected. I can talk you through it. Right. And just physically being present for someone.
Well, I think what you've said, JODEE, is just, and I think I can say this for all of you moms, is that you just confirmed a lot about what we do in our group and how we are here to support one another. You know, whether at any time we might be on the call, we might come in at a 3 or a 4, you know, and we surround that one and just and I remember as you were talking, you know, several of us, you know, we would say, okay, this is what it is. What do I need to do now? I've acknowledged it. You know, I found all the bottles taped underneath his bed. This is crazy. We can't continue to do this. Okay, but something has to change. You know, we've been there and we've grown through it and we've seen. So these levels are just very explanatory, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it explains where we've been, where we were, and where our kids are. And you said several times that, you know, they can't give what they don't have, but we expect them to keep giving and to keep acting like we raised them to be.
Yeah. And I feel like too, I just want to show, like, nobody on the planet wakes up and wants to be an addict. Nobody. I'm almost emotional because I feel like this rocks me to my core, right? The reason why people use is because they feel disconnected from themselves. They feel disconnected. And I'm not just saying about using drugs or using alcohol. The reason why any of us lean into food, smoking, shopping, targeting, yoga, whatever, is because we're literally trying to find our center. We're trying to build a connection. And when we feel disconnected, we reach for something that temporarily allows us to feel connected. And I share that in saying, if an addict had access to a healthy resource that truly made them feel connected, they would choose it over what they're choosing. But they're choosing this thing because they simply don't want to feel. And the crazy part is it's this, I want to say, they don't want to feel the pain. And the crazy part for me is I work with addicts, I work with parents, I work with moms, I work with all these people. When you help people unpack the stories, and that's where I was going to lean into, I wanted to share with you guys about Interrupt the Story, because I think it's a powerful space. But we live inside these stories that we tell ourselves every day. And so if I'm telling myself this story and it's evoking an emotion that I don't want to feel, yet I don't know any other story to tell, and I've normalized the story and I don't realize this is a story, I'm just all I want to do is make the pain stop. And the pain comes from the story, right? And it's understanding when people unpack these stories and they're released, imagine the energy. If my story is pinned down on my map in a level 1 and I'm a victim to this story, we can medicate it, we can diagnose it, we can treat it, we can talk about it, we can do all kinds of things. But until it's released, it's going to stay, right? I talk in the book about, I feel like I don't want to go too far, but like I talk about anchors and triggers, right? Like we can only be triggered by something if there's an anchor currently on our map. And it's not on everybody's map, it's just on ours, right? I share that, I candidly always share, people always say, well, so-and-so is pushing my buttons, or why does he say that he knows that pushes my buttons. And I always say, what would happen if the button wasn't there?
Yeah.
Right?
He couldn't push it. He couldn't push it if it wasn't there.
It's our button, but we're mad that somebody else is pushing it. Get more curious about what is the button about than who could push it, right? That goes back to the internal, external. We're worried about the external people around us because they trigger our internal anchors. But if we get more curious about our anchors and where they're from and we release them, nothing matters. And that's where I'm sharing about, like, the more we heal, the brighter we show up in the world, because we're like, oh my God, that used to faze me. It doesn't even faze you anymore. Right? And so it's understanding what's going on inside, what's going on my map that's creating this projected outcome.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yes, for sure.
It's my understanding that a lot of therapists say that childhood trauma is behind addiction.
Yes.
Is that why they say that, because of the map?
Yes, and let me share with you too. Thank you so much for asking that question, because I feel like that is something I didn't touch on today. When we say trauma, or at least me, when I talk about trauma, I say trauma is anything that takes you outside of your coherent state. Trauma doesn't have to be my parents got divorced or I was inappropriately anything, right? It doesn't have to be this big crazy thing. It can simply be like I call them micro traumas. I was bullied. I can share that with you. I was bullied as a kid, and it was all these little tiny jabs. That was one of the things, right? But that consistent presence of somebody where you constantly have to be on guard builds this world where you're showing up every day on guard, right? So imagine showing up every day contracted as a victim, waiting because you know you're someone's prey, because the story I was telling myself was, this doesn't feel good. I don't want to go in this room and they're all going to make fun of me. I don't want to wear these shoes or these clothes, whatever it was, right? Versus saying, okay, no, I get to show up as my whole self. That the stories that they're saying or the poking that they're talking about is because they feel some kind of way on their own map. Let me circle back to the childhood trauma. But the childhood trauma is, yes, so something happened. And the other thing too is most people aren't even aware of what it is. Something happened and it's been pinned down to their map, and every time it's re-poked or re-triggered, they don't want to feel that feeling. I feel like I'm going to share something else with you that might shed light on this. The whole idea of the book, not the whole idea. I feel like the pivotal piece for me that unlocked everything was when I learned about arrested emotional development. So arrested emotional development is the concept that when something happens to you, say that something happens to you when you're 4, and this is crazy, like say that your mom is running late and you were left at school, like somebody didn't come to get you, and now you're in the office and they called your mom, and like something weird, like the mom told the grandma to pick you up and the grandma forgot, whatever it was, you're sitting in that office, you're 4 years old, you're terrified because all the school is dark, you're with that one person that's left in the building, who knows what you're saying as a 4-year-old. And so your ability to trust a loved one is shattered. It's stuck because you're 4. Like how much access do you have to your feelings when you're 4 years old? So that gets anchored onto your map. And now every day, say that you're 60 years old, when your trust is engaged, you respond as a 4-year-old. This is why you can be in a store and watch a full-grown woman have a childlike meltdown, or man, right? Where in your brain, you're like, oh my God, does this person realize? Like, they've normalized it. They're like, no, what are you talking about? That it's not me. This person is a jerk. This person said blah, blah, blah. And they're literally operating as a 4-year. You can hear their voice shift. You can hear their energy shift. You can hear all these things shift. And in your brain, you're like, has anybody ever witnessed a friend do this? Or somebody around them have a full-on meltdown? And you're like, what's happening right now? Right? It's because that emotion is still 4 years old. And so that's what I'm talking about with the DSM, right? I'm pointing behind me because I study the DSMs just because of how much they change over time. From the first DSM was like 84 pages. Does everybody know what the DSM is? It's the Diagnostic Statistic Manual of mental health. And it's the book that they use to say, oh, you have 5 of these 9 things. I think you have anxiety. It's what therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists use to diagnose the presentation of mental illness. And I share that in saying our Western approach is to diagnose and medicate. And then we have this whole other approach in therapy where they think that they can treat, and we're going to talk about it and we're going to work through it. But they're still talking about, they're responding to and they're talking to the symptom that comes from this arrested emotion, right? So they're like, oh, well, you have these outbursts, and when you have them, this is what you should do. Or if your feelings are feeling this way, right? These are all symptoms. No one's the root cause is right here on your map. And the root cause is something you've probably, not you, anybody, all of us. I feel like whenever I say you, I want you guys to know I'm not saying like you, I'm saying us, right? It's on our maps. And so it's understanding, like, that's why I always say, like, we have no idea all the crazy things that are on our map because we've normalized them. But it's when we get really curious about something that we do, and we can let ourselves create recognition around the pattern will lead you right to what's anchored on your map, or what's anchored on our kids' maps. And it doesn't have to be something crazy. And I share that in saying, I went through the moments of, was I a bad mom? What did I do? How did I get here? Why is this light, right? Versus me saying, no, there was a moment in time, or a couple, whatever it was, that she felt disconnected, as anybody would. And this is the current solution. And so and I think I share that saying, like, I think that's my level 6 approach, right? And it's about being free from judgment. And it's simply about being curious and saying, I think when we're curious, we can't point fingers. When we're curious, we're open. We're open to, hey, what happened? How did we get here? When we're judgmental and we're angry and we're frustrated and we're mad, we don't really have access to solutions. And to give you guys another candid visual about the anabolic and catabolic, I always say, like, imagine that you're standing on a cliff. If any of you have ever traveled wherever you went in the world, imagine that we used to live in LA. So I feel like I I loved taking in that skyline where you're up on the top of the mountain, watching the sunset and all the twinkling lights are on, right? All the businesses, and you can just see the world, almost a 360 panoramic view. Imagine that whether you were in Europe or where you were in Hawaii, wherever you were, if you've ever experienced that freeing space where you're like, oh my God, you're taking it all in and you're like, this is beautiful. It could be the Grand Canyon, it could be the ocean, whatever it is for you, right? That's that embodied anabolic energy where you're like, this is brilliant. And then imagine somebody swinging a door closed right in front of you and it all gets shut off and there's a peephole and that's all you get to see it through. And you're like, that whole thing you were just experienced just got funneled down into this little tiny peephole. So imagine when you're operating in the world with anabolic energy, you have access to everything around you. When you're stuck and contracted in this other energy in the catabolic space, the only solutions that you can find live inside that little tiny world, right? We have tunnel vision where we're like, I want them to act this way. I want them to do this thing. Or we get even angry or frustrated with ourselves because we want these things from ourselves from this little tiny window of opportunity, right? Does this make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, did that answer your question, Marianne?
Yes, that was helpful. Thank you.
So
Okay.
I feel like it's understand. That's why I keep saying, like, the more we heal, the more that little peephole gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we can find more solutions and we understand more and we're expanded more. And there's things that bother us and there's things that don't, right? I feel like when I detached probably 2 years in to a 7-year journey where I was like, you're on your own. Like, I'll be here for you anytime you call me, I got you, but here's my rules. Here's what I won't do. Here's where you can't live. Right? And so it's
And we didn't
understanding.
even talk about that, Colleen. We didn't even talk about that, but
Yeah.
I say that a lot too. And another thing that you said is, healing is a verb. I like that. It's an
Yeah.
action. It's a doing. And another thing that you said was that, the things that are added to your map over a lifetime, that it's simply where you've been.
Right.
The anchors on your map. I visualize like a timeline, and that's where you've been, but that's not necessarily who you are.
Yeah.
Who are you in your healing? And you talked about becoming you. And we're big on, what have you done for you today?
Yeah.
Your self-care, taking care of you, because if you're taking care of you, then you're more able to heal and then to help other moms and to help, your other family members and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I forgot about, I feel like there's lots of fun things that I shared in there, but like one of the things I did say was like all these different landmarks on all the places that you've been don't define who you are. They're just simply places that you've been. And I always say, like, it doesn't matter where you started. What matters is what you're willing to learn in order to heal. Truly.
Mm.
Right? It doesn't matter where we start. Think about where I started, right? A 17-year-old girl with a 6th grade education and a baby. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
How
But
was your support system?
Through that, good. Through my daughter's journey, not great. Not
Okay.
great. But I leaned into other things. Yeah. But it was challenging. But I feel to share with you, like, where my daughter's journey ended was at Hazelden. I don't know
Okay.
if anybody's fluent with Hazelden, but that was a game changer for us. And I can share with you that I dropped her off there. I remember it was a moment in time and I said, I'm going to drive you there and I'm never coming back to get you. I'm not. And I hope that you're as resourceful in your sober life as you were in using.
Yeah.
I know for sure when you're ready, you'll find your way home. And if you don't, that's okay, because this isn't going to pan out well here. This is Detroit.
Mm.
Right? And so it took her a year, but she came home with more money than she's ever had in her life because she had nothing to do there, right? I don't know if anybody's ever been to Minnesota, but there's not very much to do but work. So she stayed in the residential thing, and then she went into the halfway house, which was very short-lived because she wanted nothing to do with being in that kind of an environment. And then she found a lady that let her rent a room. She rented a room and worked her ass off and stayed in her sober life and realized and learned all the things the really super hard way.
Yeah.
But
She was getting stronger in her cocoon.
yeah. And she had to learn, right? She had to learn all those muscles. And so I share that with, I'm candidly sharing that with you guys. I don't openly talk about it. She's not ready to. And I said, when you're ready to, you will. But like, you won't find things about addictions on my page or in, not really, like, I don't tell her story because I think it's hers to tell, but I'm sharing it with you because I think it's, I share it with you so that you guys understand. I know this language. I've been here. I've been this mom. I get it. And every day I feel like it doesn't always go away. There's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, she's brilliant, she's amazing. But and there's other times where I'm like, I haven't talked to her in like 4 days. Should I be worried? Right? And you just lean into that, like, should I? And then I'm like, no, like even if that was true, it has nothing to do with me. That's not my life. Right? I'm only in charge of me. And so that was a really challenging yet really cool journey to come to that space.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing you say is that you can be healed. You can go through the steps of healing and feel liberated from those past things, but you still will occasionally take a dip.
For sure. For sure.
And so what I've realized just this week, and I've known it before, is that my issue, my map is prejudice. And I don't even know what age I became aware of it. I'm Hispanic and I'm from a small town in central New Mexico. And there's just powerful prejudice both ways. And so I felt it both from my Hispanic childhood friends that didn't accept me because they thought I was they called me the Americana, which meant I was too white. and then from the white friends, although they never said it, their parents and their culture said that they didn't accept me for being Hispanic. And it just it pops up every once in a while. So yesterday somebody asked me why I went to the university that I went to, and I said something flip, but then I realized I came here to start new. So I didn't have to live with those expectations that had happened. And if I'd gone to other universities in state, I would have experienced that. So this university allowed me to experience that. And then today something happened and I thought, oh, it's because I'm Hispanic. So even though I'm healed, even though I'm mature, I have those moments that I still go back on that. And I think about all the things going on in our culture right now with racism and systemic racism, and there's a whole bunch of us that are stuck with that particular issue in our map. So
thank you so much for sharing, because I think I also see you and feel you in that space. I feel like I'm that girl right now. It's like, me too, right? But I'm sharing that and saying, like, both of my kids are biracial. And so that's a world that we live in too. Even from the moment I was a teen mom and people were like, oh my God, what did your parents say? And everybody was freaking out. And I'm like, I wasn't raised in a world where we saw that. I'm like, that wasn't the concern. The concern was that I was a teenager. Like, that wasn't a thing. But even now, I have those same thoughts too. Like, it's like, right, I feel judged a lot from the way I show up in the world with my kids. But the other part of me is like, I'm on the prove them wrong path right now. Right. And so it's like, and on the educate path. Right. And so it's like, I feel like I was put here to educate people so that they understood what that looks like and what it feels like. And there's people I feel like there's people I'm willing to candidly call out when it's hurtful or it's harmful, if it's a learning opportunity and I can stay in my 6 and do it. Right. So if I can honor my level 6 energy and share with somebody, hey, can we talk about this real quick? I'll do it. But it's like, if I have to lower my energy to educate you, I'm out. And I I feel like we can find those things in everything around us,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like, I think a lot of times I give people the benefit of the doubt. And I also just love proving people wrong, because I feel like there's, and not in a bad way, right? But I feel like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Teen Mom 6th grade education writes a 350-page book, right?
Yeah.
I can share with you guys. I was sharing last night. I just got notification. I've been applying for PhD programs because people are like, Jodie, can you just get like, at the moment, people are like, are you just a coach? And I'm like, no, I think I've far surpassed the title of coach. I do use that title because it allows me the flexibility I need, because sometimes I'm dropping the F-bomb. I'm pretty unfiltered. I'm pretty professional, but I think if I had like a license and I was like a therapist or a psychologist, they're going to want me to climb in this really conservative box that I'm not interested in dancing in, and it really wouldn't serve people. But I share that in saying I have been applying to PhD programs, and I just got into one. And it's like racking my brain with, I'm like, thank you. I share that and saying, like, there's sometimes where I'm like, who am I to do that? And there's other times where I'm like, well, who am I not to? Like,
Really?
that's
Yeah,
crazy,
you
right?
go,
And
girl.
so
Yeah.
it's like when you hear yourself sometimes, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna show them what's possible. I'm gonna show people what we're capable of.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a really cool place to be, is to just, be the vet. I think the greatest thing I can do on this planet is to be the best version of Jodie I can possibly be,
Right.
because then nothing matters, right? Then you're a role model for everybody around you, and you're living your best life in this really generous, curious, level 6 expanded state where anything's possible.
Well, what you did as a teenager, Jody, there's not a lot of teenage moms that go that route, that have a support system that can pull themselves up and that can decide, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be my better self. And then again, I've seen some teenage moms who have just totally gone the opposite direction, and ruined their lives and their children's lives, or they
Right.
don't have their children, anymore. And it's hard. Yeah. But everybody has their own choices that they have to make, and the choices that you made have brought you here where you're at. And now you're able to write this book that's going to influence not only us, but so many other people, but when you were a 17-year-old pregnant, you didn't have this book on your brain.
I say you couldn't have even described my 17-year-old self would not have even been able to comprehend or dream as big as some of the shit that I've done. Like, it just wouldn't have even made sense.
Yeah.
But I share that in saying too, like, I feel like I want to share with you guys, if there's one thing that if there's one thing that you leave here with today, or there's one thing that if there's one aha that you'd want to leave with, I think it's about being compassionate. And I think it's about being curious and compassionate, in meaning, like, we don't have to agree, we don't have to align, I don't have to like it, but I can have compassion for where you are, or where our kids are, where our spouses are. And I think the other thing too that we didn't talk about today is how challenging other people are in this journey. Like, you might be on your path where you're like, yeah, I'm going to hold space for my kid. They're making crazy decisions, blah, blah, blah. And you have neighbors or family members saying, why do you let them back in? Why do you do this? That's heavy. Like, when you're in your own pain and there's all this external noise or judgment or people that don't understand or all those things, like, that's where I wish I would have known then how to have compassion for those people, because I think I could have educated more people on that journey
Okay.
into understanding, right? Because I think sometimes we either get tied up in their energy and then they flip us around, right? We might be like cruising up and feeling like we're in a 4 or a 5, and somebody comes up just and then we're like jolted, like, what just happened? I thought I was in a good place, and now this person just made me think of all these other things.
Right.
And that was what I said earlier about we're at choice whether we believe them or not. And to go, you know what? Hey, thanks so much, but I really can't handle that today. Or thanks so much, but what I'm really looking for today is some blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or right. And it's just understand, even if they have, I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, right? Where it's like we might be that person to somebody else. And so I think it's about being compassionate with ourselves and with others and allowing that journey
Yeah,
to
we have
unfold.
to be careful, and we say, I'm not going to tell you what to do because this is your life and your child, and we're never going to tell you what to do. And they're going, well, do I let him back home? Do I let him move back in? Do I not? Do I, what do I do? They're looking for a simple answer, and
Yeah.
can't give you a simple answer.
I think too, I shared with you guys, I don't know if anybody's heard of Gabor Mate. He's I'm a huge fan. I'm currently doing compassionate inquiry, which is his modality, and it's a year-long training to add to my repertoire of trainings. But I just keep layering it on because it's really cool. But his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, is probably one of the best spot on books that describes addictions and the process and explains way more. I think that his book is hands down the best.
That's the one you told me about last night, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
I'll put it in the chat really quick.
Okay. Yeah, do that, please. And does anybody else have, we've got just a few more minutes. Does anybody else have any questions for JODEE? This is your time.
You guys are the best. If you have questions later, you can head to my website. It's just my first and last, or I can put it in the chat. It's just my first and last name. Yeah. Well, good stuff. Thank you guys for reading the book. Thank you for honoring yourself and showing up today and being the amazing moms that you are.
Thank you. This was good.
Yeah.
This was very
So if there is one thing, just one thing, two things, I don't know, three things, you've given us a lot. But if there's just a couple of things that you could tell us, as moms, with our addicted loved ones, are all in a different place, different journey here,
Yeah.
I know you mentioned being compassionate, and I think we've learned to listen better, and not just react to them and what's going on, during that time. And we've learned a little bit more about, if they're using and how to respond to them during that time, because we would respond differently than when they were sober, so we've been studying about listening better, and being compassionate, but there's a fine line there, with our boundaries and sticking to those boundaries. One thing that maybe, or you said that you would have been more compassionate as you were going through your journey with your daughter. Is there anything that you can pull from that you could see that would benefit us?
Yeah, I feel like the only other thing that the only other thing that I know now that I didn't know then is the power and the leverage of asking questions.
Okay.
And I share that in saying, I just was looking at the book. It's page 124 and 125 in the book. But I talk about, there's five word questions that you can ask, meaning like how, what, where, who, and how. I feel like I already mentioned that one. But it's how, what, when, who, and where. Right? Each one of those words reveals a different thing. And so even asking your kids anything that you want to know from your kid or any statement that you want to give, you can figure out how to formulate it into a question. And when you ask people questions, what you're inviting is their own self-discovery. And the whole thing with
that's great.
yeah, the whole thing with unlocking this disconnection that they're feeling is something that they're going to have to self-discover. It's not something that you're going to be able to find or something that you're going to be able to offer. It's something that they're going to have to find. And so like one of my first questions I often ask people, and this would be a little bit further into the conversation if we were, 10 minutes into a conversation and we've built this awesome rapport, I might ask them, how old were you the first time you had this feeling? And they're going to go, I don't know. And it's going to go, right? Or they're going to go, the other thing that the most powerful thing in coaching for me is silence, right? Meaning I'll ask a question and then I will shut the hell up, right? I'll literally, as a coach, I might ask, how old were you the first time this happened? The phone might be dead silent for 2 minutes. Because what's happening in that moment is somebody's literally like, they're all over their map trying to figure it out. And then they'll be like, I was 11. And in your mind, you're like, what? And they're like, this one time when we were at T-ball, and your brain is like, what? Like you're like inside, right? But it's like they're figuring it out, but they won't figure it out if we tell them what it is, or if we tell them what we think it is, or if we offer band-aids for the wounds that they're trying to soothe. And so the power of asking questions and just leaving them right where they are is really powerful. You can also ask the same question 5 different ways with those. I was talking the other day in a parenting group about homework. And so I was like, instead of me saying, do your homework, right? It's like, hey, how am I going to know when your homework is done?
Right.
Or where will you put your book bag when you're done doing your homework? Or what, you know what I mean? Like you're asking the same question. Like, what are you going to do when you're done with your homework? Or
I think that's a skill, Jody, that, more moms, any mom just needs to work on. That is a skill. And the more you do it, the better
the more you do it.
It just comes natural. Yeah.
And the more that when you really get used to listening to what the content is that people are saying, not the meaning we're giving it, but the content that they're saying. And you'll be like, those are the moments where you're like, how do you know that's true? Or what evidence do you have to prove that theory? Or where did you learn that idea? Or right? And there's no blame, there's no judgment. We're literally just curious and we're asking a question. And I always tell people too, whether we're here on Zoom, sometimes I'm on Clubhouse, which is a social media app. Sometimes I'm in different spaces and I'll say, I might ask a question. I in no way, shape, or form, I'm not looking for your answer. The answer is for you. Right? And you can journal about it. You can, whatever, like you don't have to give me the answer. Even with your kids, you might be like, hey, I might ask you questions. You don't have to give me the answer. And I think 90% of the time they don't want to answer us anyway, because they're angry or mad or in their space. But that it doesn't mean the answer doesn't surface for them. They might not
rolling around. Yeah.
Right. But it came up and they are now self-aware and they're like, oh, and then and over time, things start to unlock because we're creating this self-discovery for them. We're creating this awareness. And that's where I was sharing about when I was saying, I coach parents, I coach addicts, I coach lots of people in this same space. I'm just coaching them into this self-discovery. But that is a skill that, and I appreciate when you're like, that sounds like a learned thing. It's the skill that I've gained from studying neuro-linguistic programming, developmental trauma. The law of vibration is what I'm calling the 7 levels of energy, right? A lot of times people talk about the laws of attraction. And I always say the law of vibration is tenfold the laws of attraction, right? I feel like I'm on a mini tangent, but I'll circle back. The law of attraction is the whole idea that if I say, I am beautiful, or I am wealthy, and I'm out blowing my money doing crazy things, how wealthy am I, right? However, if I say things like, I deserve to understand how money works, or I'm worthy of understanding my finances at a finite level, and I literally speak directly to the limiting belief, that's when I'm pulling out of like, where is my level of energy around this belief? And now I'm creating an affirmation that speaks directly to it versus a big blanket statement that just soothes that pain or makes me feel better for 30 seconds. And so I'm saying what I've learned in this book is that developmental psychology, neurolinguistic programming, the law of vibration, coaching, compassionate inquiry. Another book I have sitting next to me, if you guys get a chance, this is probably another, I'll put this in the chat. This book utterly changed my life. It's referenced in the back of the book too.
Yeah.
This is the guy I would have loved to have met him. This is the beautiful human that stumbled upon arrested emotional development, which is no longer in the DSM and no one talks about anymore, and is the root cause of all the other things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADD, ADHD, like all these things are symptoms of arrested emotional development. I'll put this in the chat really quick.
And it makes you wonder why and how that just evaporated.
I have a theory.
I bet you do.
I have a theory. It's called Big Farm, right?
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah,
can't make money off of you if you heal.
this is true.
Like we're diagnosing and medicating and treating. Who's talking about healing?
Yeah,
No
Yeah.
one.
yeah. Very good. You just summed that up very well.
Yeah.
That was
I
good.
feel like sometimes
Yeah.
I get in trouble, but it's true.
That was good.
You
Mhm.
won't get in trouble here.
Yeah, that you guys, if this book, like that was a pivotal thing for me. I read that long ago. Game changer.
Okay, this is good. Good homework for us too.
Yep.
And
So 2 awesome books. Well, 3 with mine, right?
of course. And will you have another one coming out?
I will. Yes.
When?
Probably mid next year.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Do you have a title or is it
I
similar?
don't yet, but it's similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we will look forward to that.
Yeah.
And listen, anytime you have any available, just you're sitting around in your pajamas and you want to talk to us or come on a call. We need every
Yes.
Monday and Thursday.
For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. And I was just going to share too, if anybody wants to jump, trying to think of where it is on my website, because I don't do it enough, but somewhere on my website, you can join or hit the contact me thing and join my website. I'm often, because my hands are in a million things, there's a lot of times I'll send out a blurb that says, hey, I'm looking for 5 people to do, I feel like demo sessions with. Where it's like, it would be, they're usually complimentary, and I'm like trying a new tool, and I'm looking for people to try them on.
Oh,
So,
yay.
yeah.
I'm there. It's like my hairdresser. Just do whatever you want to with me.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Guinea
I'll come
pigs.
find
Guinea
her.
pigs.
Guinea pigs. Yeah. we
Guinea
can do-
pigs. There you go. Yeah. And I think I'm pretty good at what I do. So I feel like if it's a new tool, I'm just trying to like tweak something, but I'll be like, hey, I need 10 people real quick, and I'll do 10 individual sessions. So yeah.
Yeah.
keep in
Okay.
touch.
Good info. Well,
Mhm.
yeah. Or if you need a group to, put something out there at,
Yes.
we're here for you.
Good stuff.
Well, unless someone has anything else, I think we're about finished with this session.
This
This
is
is good.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you, Jody. Yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm
This is
sure
good.
Michelle will just love this. I know she hates that she couldn't be here after she set it all up, but we'll let her listen, and then I'm sure she will get back
Mhm.
with you. So
Good stuff.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good
You're
night.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.